Okay, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Hearing, where we cover all types of news, innovation, and happenings, covering the whole gambit of the world of hearing and the world of audio, hearing health included. And so for today's episode, I'm joined by the recipient of Hearing Health Matters 2021 Innovator of the Year Award, with his company Noopl, CEO Tim Trine. So, Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then if you want to introduce Noopl and just kind of an overview of what your innovative company does.
Great. No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And before we go on, I actually have to show this awesome trophy.
That's awesome.
So we didn't expect that. We got notification about the award, which will be, I guess, announced. This is the formal announcement of this award, and we're just humbled to receive that. That was very cool, unexpected surprise. So a little bit about me. I've been in the hearing aid industry my entire career. After doing my PhD at the University of Minnesota, I went back to Vanderbilt, where I had done my master's degree, and joined the faculty there. And was there for 3 years. And during that time, I began doing some research in collaboration with Starkey Hearing Technologies. And to make a long story short, ended up at Starkey, initially there to do research. And within about 6 months, I was driving product development and spent a long career there. So 19 years at Starkey, ultimately as the chief technical officer. From there, I moved to Eargo. And I think many of your viewers will be familiar with Eargo. It's really the first hearing aid startup that has had success. Many have tried and most have failed, but Eargo successfully took it all the way to an IPO and are still going today. And then in 2020, I left Eargo to join Noopl as the president and CEO. So, with Noopl, we are kind of attacking this hearing and noise problem from a completely different perspective. And we're just getting started. So we launched our first product in May, listened to our customers, did a quick hardware, firmware, and application app update, and really got moving into the market in late August. So we're available now on Amazon, and we'll be in Best Buy online next week and in store in December. So we're beginning to get some traction. So we're excited.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, you're coming at this from a different approach. It's an approach that I think is been made possible through sort of the just astronomical growth of AirPods. I think that AirPods have really ushered in an entirely new wave of consumer audio in the way in which we as a society now sort of are conditioned to wear things in and around our ears for extended periods of time. And so I think, as so happens, often in these tech booms is you have an ecosystem that's built out around these super popular hits. And you're a perfect example of that. So why don't you share a little bit about what Noopl is, both the product itself and then what you're attempting to do, like you said, kind of solving some of the challenges like speech and noise.
Right. Actually, the deciding technical hurdle that was overcome for me personally in thinking about joining Noopl, because I had been familiar with the company for a few years prior to that. Steve Verduner is the co-founder of the company, and he reached out to me a few months after I had joined Eargo and wanted to bring me on board. And it was one of those meetings, a friend of a friend, and I really didn't expect to be excited about what he had to say, and took it as a courtesy, meeting, and but left that with a wow, you guys are really onto something here. But no, I can't leave Eargo. I just started. But I said, look, I'm happy to help you guys out. It's not a competing product, and not a competing technology. But fast forward to fall of 2019, and that's when AirPods Pro were launched. And both Steve and I kind of had the same reaction, which was, this is a great vehicle for hearing. And why is that? Two reasons. One, they totally nailed transparency mode, right? So
Right.
the notion of using the microphones in your AirPod to pick up voice and transmit it into the ear canal seems like a trivial thing, but doing that in a way that is acoustically acceptable, as all of your audience knows very, very well, right? The occlusion effect is a significant barrier for that, but Apple absolutely nailed it from a transparency perspective. That and the addition of what was happening on the wireless front, it was easy to see that there was this great convergence of technologies that were going to enable some really innovative products. So let me talk a little bit about Noopl here in that context. So I'll show this up to the screen. That's the Noopl device there on the bottom. There we go. And if I hold it just right, you can see that under that little array of dots there are 3 microphones. And that's where most of the magic occurs. So it's 3 microphone directional array and allows for about a 15 dB improvement in the signal to noise ratio. Well, the magic really comes from when we're using your AirPod Pros is the fact that we can leverage aspects of spatial audio to hear that array. So as I turn my head to the left and I turn my head to the right, you see that arc, which indicates the direction of the processing, follows my head movement really quickly and accurately. So the use case is many of your viewers are familiar with the concept of remote microphones. This is kind of a remote microphone on steroids. So in a crowded restaurant, just pop it down on the table in front of you, still within arm's reach. You don't have to think about it anymore, right? And as I turn my head, it's just going to focus in on who I want to talk to. And then of course, we've made it flexible. The other aspect that has been a great complement is Chattable AI-based noise reduction. So we licensed Chattable's algorithm, and it's a simple one slider interface, right, to then dial in additional noise reduction that runs on the phone. So most of our processing is happening on this accessory, and then we've got Chattable noise reduction happening on the phone. And then most recently, last feature, which is important for people with some hearing loss, is that, and what we heard, number one piece of feedback, let me see if I can get the glare off of there, is really the ability to provide some frequency specific gain, right? So we've just got the simple bass treble control, but again, it's a bass treble control unlike any graphic equalizer you've ever worked with. So that's provide plus or minus 20 dB in the lows and the highs to really help personalize that experience for anybody and compensate for some mild high frequency hearing loss as well. So it's a great all around product at a price point that is very accessible. So list price is $249.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's going on there that I find to be just so fascinating. As somebody that's been kind of like covering the innovation in this space for a while, it's you're really like tapping into a lot of the most exciting trends, in my opinion. So first of all, I think with the AirPods Pro, one of the things that I saw that, in a recent iOS, it might have been 14. I don't know if it was as recent as 15 with they're on now, but it was the ability for developers to tap into the APIs of the accelerometer and the gyroscope,
right.
So the inertial sensors in the actual AirPods Pro, and you just showed it, exactly what this looks like is when you turn your head, you're basically moving. You're basically orienting the device in the directionality of the microphones in there. So again, I think like that's so cool to me that we're already now starting to see what this looks like when those kinds of APIs open up and the use cases that can be built on top of it. The second thing is what you said about, Chattable. So I recently did a conversation here on This Week in Hearing with Giles Tung and Andy Bellavia. And we talked about, basically what Giles's team at Chattable has been doing and how it's being baked into different offerings like Noopl's. And so, not only do you have this great directional microphone that's, using, like you said, it's kind of a new age version of it that's tapping into things that allows for it to be a directional mic on steroids. Well, now you have the actual AI processing engine that runs on it so that you're reducing the latency. And again, when we think about like, how do you solve speech and noise? You have to come at it from a different, probably a different perspective than we've ever tried before. And you're sort of throwing all of the like most new age tech at it. And I think that's really, really exciting. And then the last thing that you mentioned is, okay, so this is like a lower cost ancillary item. And I think, knowing that this is a show that like really caters to hearing professionals, I want to give you a chance to kind of speak to this idea, which is this is an awesome ancillary option that you can position with any patient. That again, if the name of the game is how do you just increase your overall value with your patient, and you show them and open their eyes to a lot of the new things that exist on the market today, that in and of itself is highly, highly valuable, I think. And I think that there's a real role that the provider can play here in helping to facilitate that and using that as a way in which they can, I think, increase their overall perception within their patient's eyes.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think you're on to something spot on, right? And so I'll start with, this isn't just a product for AirPod Pros, right? And it works with any MFI hearing aid as well. So it's our primary target isn't necessarily the people with existing hearing aids, but of course, most people, it's a good reminder to all of us, right? The number one complaint of people that are coming into the clinic is hearing and noise. The number one complaint of people wearing hearing aids is hearing and noise, right? At the top of that Pareto analysis doesn't change and hasn't changed in 50 years. Not saying that we haven't made tremendous progress in our ability to treat the hearing and noise problem, but it remains a big, big problem, right? And so having a product like this that is really low friction and low cost that you can bolt on as a front end to an existing hearing aid is one solution. And then there's this other population that is going untreated, right? So somewhere between, depending on the clinic, depending on the context of the clinic, between 10 and 40% of incoming patients are coming into the clinic because they have a problem, right? But those between 10 and 40% are walking away with no treatment. And they're walking away either because they're not ready to deal with the stigma, or they're not ready to deal with the cost, or frankly, they don't have enough hearing loss to really derive benefit from a full-blown hearing aid. And so there's a whole segment of the market that really hasn't been touched that isn't, so we don't represent a threat to existing channel, really complement that channel very, very well. And there's, everybody knows the statistics on the average time between first realization or diagnosis of hearing loss and first hearing aid is still on average 7 years, right? So if we can get people earlier on in that patient journey, and you as a clinician can get that person as part of your database, develop a relationship with that person, right? The total lifetime value of that patient goes up, right? And so we definitely can play a role in that context as well. So,
yeah. I completely agree. I think that it's a great way, I think, to reach a lot of people that you hadn't previously reached before. And that's sort of the name of the game right now. I feel like within this whole industry and in this space is that, you look at the writing on the wall with everything that's coming with OTC and all of that. I think that what you just said there is sort of a microcosm of, I think, the bigger trend, which is I don't necessarily know if the current existing market's going to change all that much. What I think we're going to see is a dramatic expansion of the market as more people that had never really been inclined for whatever reason, whether, like you said, it's price, stigma, or just the perceived feeling of I don't warrant anything quite yet. Right. So when you start to present new kinds of solutions, and again, what I find to be so interesting about your particular product is you're talking about a product that is it's a very mainstream consumer electronics device that people aren't buying for that purpose. It's a post-purchase realization where they say, hey, look, I already own AirPods Pro. well, there's this attachment that I can get for my phone that's like a dongle that I use in a very, very situational setting, maybe initially, where I struggle at work in the conference room, or I struggle at my favorite restaurant. It's just kind of noisy, So I see it as being that's what makes me so excited about what's happening, broadly speaking, with, I think, a lot of this stuff that's happening on the more mild end of the market is, you're giving people a much more palatable entry point into the market that I think opens the door to them realizing the benefits of, hey, look, I have this restoration. This is what this sounds like. Again, this is great. And you kind of let them come to the realization that they want more on their own terms, rather than saying, take it or leave it. Here's what options you have available to you, which is kind of what's always existed for a variety of reasons. But I think technology really has caught up to the point now where there's some very compelling entry-level solutions that I think will really open the door in a sizable way to people that we've never really seen in this market before.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. Let me throw some quick numbers at you, because I'm, part of my philosophical view is quantifying, being a very analytical person. Yeah. I like to quantify things, right? But if you just look at, that's why I was pulling up on the side here, right? The U.S. hearing aid market is $10 billion, right, at the retail level, right? That, the estimate this year in sales, U.S. hearing aid sales, 4.7 million hearing aids that will be sold in 2021. You contrast that with the truly wireless earbud market, that's $35 billion market. Right. And 300 million earbuds to be sold in 2021, right? So the scale is just crazy different. And also, the other thing is in terms of the growth of that market, right? The hearing aid industry has come back, right? The recent reports are, that pent up demand has definitely created a great quarter for the industry. And anticipation is that 2021 total end of year sales will outpace 2019 sales even, which is great. But that compound annual growth rate is about 4 to 6%, right? Best estimates on the compound annual growth rate for the earbud market is 17%. Right. So wow. It's just a crazy difference. So there is this, you can't escape it. There is this convergence of technologies that that is a reality for all of us, to understand, how do we take advantage of that, and how do clinicians take advantage of that? Hopefully they see that as, hey, I really want to have a solution for those people earlier in the funnel, right? Earlier in the patient journey, that aren't quite ready for a variety of reasons for a full-time hearing aid, right? In situational hearing, they can play a role in brokering that and developing that relationship. And I think that's a winning combination.
Yeah, I mean, I know I was looking at some of the numbers too, and I know AirPods Pro in particular, which is sort of like, I know the ideal companion to Noopl right now, and that might change in time as you become, you increase your ecosystem of compatible products. But, we're talking about a product that AirPods version 1 debuted in 2016, I think. And 5 years later, the premium offering, there's like 190 million units that are sort of circulating globally right now. So it's not like there's some off chance that your patient's going to own these things. There's a decent chance that they're going to own them. And again, as I think you make this a more holistic ecosystem where you're compatible with all different devices, and more and more people opt to, for whatever reason, have, lots of different hearing aid users would agree, they, have a pair of their in-the-ear device headphones for streaming, podcasting, whatever it might be, that just is superior in some way or another to their hearing aids, and they use them a little bit more situational. So I think this idea of catering to that offering that many people already are owning and are continuing to own at a faster and faster pace, I feel as if it's another one of these things where it's just part of that conversation that you can have in the clinic to better understand your patient and figure out, okay, like, let me start to piece these things together and at least provide you with more options that might help to solve some of those things that maybe your hearing aids get you 90% there. But for that remaining 10%, there might be some ancillary things out there that are a better fit for it. And so you're presenting a more holistic offering to them. I just feel like that's going to be something that is more and more viable as time goes on. And it's already pretty viable.
Yeah, and I agree, and 100%, obviously, and the the size of, I mean, the brutal fact is that Apple has won that market, right? They have over 40% market share globally. I think it's north of 60% in the United States, and they've won because they've created a product that is compelling. And I think the other thing to take note of is that there's been a cultural shift, right? As
Right.
Apple has started to introduce things like headphone accommodations, which is essentially a multi-channel compressor in AirPods to, at least deal with mild to moderate hearing loss. Conversation boost, which leverages these two microphones, give you a directional boost that's about at parity with a well-designed hearing aid, and in conjunction with products like Noopl, right? The cultural barrier of seeing people use, wearing AirPods and thinking, oh, those guys are off, that person's off the air. They're listening to a podcast. They're listening to music. I can't come and talk to them. That's shifting, right? We've kind of been waiting. I've been waiting for this cultural shift to occur, and it's beginning now. And our customers, there's a few people that are apprehensive about that. And once they have it, it's a short conversation. They pull it out in a restaurant and somebody goes, what's that about? Are you on the phone? No, I'm using this to hear you better. And it immediately shifts from, oh, you're being rude to, oh my God, that's really cool. Right. Show me how that works. I could use one of those, right? I mean, that's, I think that it takes the power of a marketing engine like Apple to create that shift, right? And it's beginning to happen, and we're delighted by that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's always been sort of my my whole prerogative on this, or my belief is that I think that the role Apple's really playing is they're normalizing situational amplification, or at least they have the potential to do so. Because to your point, I think pre-AirPods, I think what was always challenging about this was, if not hearing aids in a social setting like the cocktail party or, at the dinner table or something like that, the behavioral change that you're demanding for something that's like an alternative, that's like a situational type device, it's like you're basically warranting, just like you said, what are you wearing there? What's going on there? And for a lot of people, that's really detracting. I think that might be the limitation that causes them not to want to do that. But when you have it so that you just have one AirPod in, or maybe both in, and you're at the table, and it's just like you said, this becomes more in the overall mainstream sort of zeitgeist understanding, awareness of like, this is a thing, like transparency mode has this option. I think that that's the positive impact that a company like Apple can really have here, is to make it so that it's just completely normal. And ultimately, does it then become like the cheaters equivalent within the hearing space? And then what are the implications of that? If you own a pair of cheaters, chances are that you have something that's higher end, especially as it's a progressive hearing loss typically. So again, I think it lends itself so much to this idea of how important it is to have an entry point to get people familiarized with combating it and treating it early and in the most challenging situations, so that they're not in the 7 to 10 year gap and they come to you and the problems festered over 7 years and they're in this horrible condition and they're upset and everything. A more gradual, ride to that eventual point, I think it bodes better for obviously the patient, but also the provider, in my opinion, too, because they're coming to you with an understanding of like, kind of what these things are already entail and the improvements that they might offer.
Right. I can agree more. But I think the other reality. So the other thing that's happening, right? At least the gossip that next week Apple's got another debut,
Right.
And the gossip is that AirPods 3 will be part of that. We'll see, right? And we'll see exactly what the feature set includes. The gossip again also is that spatial audio will be a feature set that's included there. But it's important to note, that even though the list price for AirPods Pro is $249, you can get them on Amazon today for $179, right? So, there's tremendous price pressure within this TWS bud space, right? And so there's going to be a proliferation of products, and the final technology stack element for us that is emerging is Bluetooth 5.2. Right, so Bluetooth 5.2 was announced beginning of last year. It's not yet in cell phones or buds, but it's right there on the cusp, right? Android 12, if you read the news on Android 12 early on, before they launched last week, it was clearly part of the planned release. Unfortunately, it didn't make the cut quite yet, in part probably more to do with the Bluetooth SIG than the folks over at Google, but it will be there very, very shortly. And that opens up it's a bevy of opportunity for Noopl, because it solves the last bit of latency that is a problem for listening in quiet, right? So we have an awesome listening and noise solution today. But when people ask, well, can I use it for my TV? Oh, you can, but it's not a great use case for us, right? And that's because we still have 70 to 80 milliseconds of latency. But with Bluetooth 5.2 and the LC3 codec that's embedded there, leveraging that, will be down in the sub 30, sub 20 millisecond range, which suddenly makes the issue completely go away, and you've got a transparent system. So it's I'm excited about what's coming. Yes, we will have an Android solution by Q1 of next year.
Okay.
And we're actively working on that. And we're continuing to add to the functionality of the system that we have. So, and then of course expanding the channel. So, for your audience, I'd love to talk to anybody that has interest. And we're piloting in several clinics across the country right now. And it remains to be seen on whether or not, this is a good channel for us, because it is a low price product, right? And typically products at this price point aren't something that moves dramatically within the audiology channel, because people see it as, I've only got so much time in every day, and why should I spend some time at this low end? But I think that's misguided in terms of not recognizing the lifetime value of your patients. And it doesn't, a 5-minute office visit or a visit, selling through in the waiting room, so your office manager is spending that time rather than the clinician spending the time, is a great opportunity as well. So if any of your customers are interested in talking about it with me, we'd absolutely love to pilot something with individual clinicians.
That's awesome. Yeah, I do. I think that there's a lot going on in my head right now about it, because I've been thinking a lot about, a lot of the conversations I've had on this show and on my podcast, Future Ear, talking about this idea of, what happens if and when that day ever comes where you find a way as a provider to unwind yourself from the widget entirely, and you're more of a, you're getting compensated on just your time. Then does it matter what you're prescribing? It might just be that, your whole time is based upon the consultation, the education, and all that. And then, so that's a different discussion for a different day. But I do think that this is something that is, I think, going to become more compelling as time goes on, even at the price point. I think that the fact of the matter is, just like you said, it's looking at it more through the lens of the lifetime value of the patient and the patient's perspective, and understanding how can you make it so that they have this optimal experience, and they go and they tell all their friends about what they're doing. And I think, if you follow that over the next few years, it's like you said earlier, we really might start to kind of see a real behavioral change, broadly speaking, be ushered in, where a lot of these behaviors become normalized. And I think that would really bode well for people that might be hesitant to treat their current sort of hearing loss or whatever situation they're in due to whatever variety of factors there are out there. So, Tim, thank you so much. Congrats on the award. This has been great. Thanks for everybody who tuned in here, and we will chat with you next time.
Thanks very much.